Recording in progress.
Ready? Yeah. Greetings, everyone. Tomorrow, the chair of the board, and we'll call the December 25 meeting to order. With a roll call, please.
Denise Kraus, Bill Mansfield, Tanya Morrow,
Yes.
Tyler Jasper,
Here.
Katrina Ernman Newton,
Here.
Dan Davis, and Carl McNair.
Here.
There's the quorum.
You. We've got
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. Sorry to see that we don't have a couple of board members with us because it's an important night, but Bill and Denise, I did text Denise. We'll see what happens. But I'm glad to see you, Katrina.
you guys might watch the drill. Yeah.
All right. Are there, with regard to, let me get the right packet out here. First order of business is generally our consent thing. There's Denise. And the first thing we discuss is the minutes. And I don't know if anybody else has got some, sorry, concerns, edits to propose, but I do. So instead of doing them tonight here, I was hoping it would be at the pleasure of the board that we just table this until the January meeting so that I can actually get you something in writing so you can see it as opposed to like doing Scrivener stuff right now.
For the minutes themselves.
Either minutes, yeah, yeah. Does that work? Okay, great. All right, thank you. All right, we'll table those until January. Unless we do a study session, because we may be doing that. All right, next up is the financial reports. We all got the financial reports.
Yep.
Anybody have any questions of staff regarding the financial reports? There was something that jumped out at me, but I did not make a note of it. Are you good? Yeah, I had to do the same thing. It felt really awkward. Okay, nobody has any questions. The record will reflect that everybody's received the financial reports. Okay, here we go. Let's get into our discussion about service priorities, meaning essentially restoration of service priorities.
Well, thanks, Matt.
Real quick, sorry, Madam Chair. I see that Katrina jumped off. I'm not sure if she just has technical difficulties, but she's no longer on here.
Oops. Yeah, we do. We'll go ahead. I'll text her, find out.
Hey, are you ready?
Sure.
Chair Morrow, board members, my name is Kelly Matting. I'm the operations manager, and we have
Deborah Wilbur, finance manager.
and we're okay. Oh, and we're here tonight to present our special levy discussion. Paige is going to share presentation.
Matt, could you please give me the ability to share? Okay, thank you.
Now it's bad at this new year.
Paige, can you try again, please? There we are.
Hello.
So Matt, is that's the one I'm going to look at? So I see this. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. This is new. Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide.
Okay.
And you have this presentation in front of you. And I didn't staple it, and there's a method to my madness, but it will come later. So this slide is on our timeline. We present this to you every time we meet to give you an update on where we are right now and where we're going. So where we are right now is this meeting is at the end of it, ideally, the board will direct staff to prepare a ballot title and we'll have a levy increment. and it's not just the ballot title, it's, you received some SEL 803 forms, very bureaucratic. They are the forms that the district filled out when we did the 2014, 16, and 21 election information. And the ballot title is an umbrella term, and under that umbrella is the caption, or what you would consider the ballot title, the question and the summary, and the summary, I realized I erred on this. The summary is different from the explanatory statement. The explanatory statement is something else. And we'll talk about that a little bit tonight, but mostly we'll talk about that at a meeting in the future. So we need to adopt the ballot title and levy increment, and that will have a meeting, our regular meeting in January 28th. Because that has to be turned in February 27th. And the explanatory statement has to be turned in to the county clerk on the 19th. We have a board meeting on the 18th of March, so we want to get the explanatory statement done and approved by you prior to that meeting on the 18th. So we're moving toward basically getting the information for this SEL 803. This is what goes in the voters pamphlet. It comes directly from the district. So that's what we're doing for this election in May 19th of 2026. It starts back really early in terms of what we have to do. Any questions on the timeline? Okay, next slide.
Hi, I'm going to present to you this updated 5-year projection. This is the projection without the levy, and it's based on the current amount of service. And the one change that I made to this was the transfers in. The transfers in are going to happen annually, and this transfer in of $250,000 is coming from the contracted services revenue from TransLink, which we get transferred from them to do capital projects. So by getting these annual transfers in to do these capital projects we have planned, we will free up some general fund revenues that will enable us maybe to make some different choices than we had been able to make last time we had this discussion. And basically, as you can see, it will have changed every year, starting with the first year of the $250,000. So the change in transfers in, you can see that $250,000 going across there. And then if you were to take last time's presentation and compare it to this form, the bottom line, which says total resources less expenditures, would have changed also all across the board. And so what this has allowed us to do, even if we don't get the levy or we don't make any service changes, is it's given us about one more year with the current service levels, with the current revenues, without any change in revenues. So last time I reported 28, 29 was going to be where we had a deficit, but now with this transfer in, we will be able to transfer in providing us part of the match for the capital projects that we have to do. We will be able to run operations to 29, 30, where we will have a deficit, where the deficit will start. And this is just if everything stays exactly as it is now with the revenues and with the service. No additions, no extra revenue, just to see what we're currently doing so you understand that if nothing happens either way, no levy passes, no other revenues, we will eventually have to consider cutting service again. So this levy is not only going to support maybe some of those service changes, but it's also going to support existing service.
Quick question. So the 2930 is that's the fourth year that we'll be collecting if we pass the levy, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
And any other questions? Okay, that's all I have.
Question.
Oh.
I'm confused. It says no levy across the row there.
That is correct, because the other levy will have expired, and this is just based on if we don't get the levy.
Saying not passing the levy.
Yes. not passing the levy and not increasing service. So it'll just be what we're currently doing right now with the revenues we're currently getting. What will happen? It's just to give some perspective to the fact that the levy is also going to support some existing service that we currently have.
I do have another question. So in the past, have we transferred in from that fund or have we used it for capital projects?
Yes.
In that fund?
Yes,
We have.
sporadically.
But we don't call it transfer in or have?
It's transfers in because it's a fund. It's a fund by itself. TransLink is its own fund and the general fund its own fund. So they're budgeted transfers and we've done them in the past. All of the budgeted transfers between us and TransLink in the past have been for capital. And that's one of the reasons why we save that money in TransLink is to use it for capital.
So I guess we've never really characterized it as transferred in before. We just put it in the other.
No,
Usually during our budget process.
Okay.
it's in the
In
budget.
there? Like,
Yes.
that? Okay, cool.
Yes, yeah.
Good to know. Thanks.
It's in this year's budget as well.
Okay.
If you were to look at this year's budget, you will see a $250,000 transfer, and that was for some software that we just purchased for the ADA service.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions? So Debbie? Go ahead.
Debbie, I assume there's no legality issues with transferring this.
Oh, no,
You've looked at it, but I just,
it's contract service revenues, and TransLink is part of RVTD. It's not its own separate entity. It's just a separate fund, and we keep it separate because we can't use any of our other funding to support TransLink. It has to stand on its own. And we always said that one of the reasons that we were doing that service and getting a small amount of revenues exceeding expenditures was for capital, and the CCOs and OHA, and they understand that. They understand, we have to have a little bit of incentive to do that service, and we use that money primarily for capital. It's always been that way ever since we started it.
So is that a legal requirement within our contracts or is it just a goal that we have to just use it for capital?
It's just a goal that
Well,
we've
okay.
used in the past because they need to cover the cost of service. So it's money that we make above and beyond the cost of the service, we split it 50-50 with them every year. It's our portion of the revenue gain. And then what we do is we've used it to buy software because they don't cover the cost of capital purchases of desks, software, those kind of things aren't included in your contracted services. So in the past, when we've bought the building or we've bought a desk for TransLink or we've bought software for TransLink, it comes out of that pool of money.
And then the other thing is that gain share can, we call it a gain share internally, but it's contract service revenues, can change over time. As our costs increase, it'll shrink. And so we can't really use it for operations because a new contract will be negotiated when that revenue stream starts to be less than expenses when it gets before it gets there. And so we it's not necessarily a guaranteed amount every single year, but we're going off of this 250 is only partial of what we're making this year, next year, and the next year. So we're not taking all of the profit from that.
Anybody else? Katrina, make sure you pipe up if you've got something because I don't look up too often. So, okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, next slide. So one of the questions that the board asked is, what's happening with other funding sources that we get? So the STIF, or the State Transportation Improvement Fund, is another funding source we get. It's payroll tax, 0.1%. So it's about 10 cents for every $10. That's what we currently get. House Bill 3991, which was passed in this legislative session, this last legislative session, doubled that that payroll tax to 0.2%. However, and it increased the gas tax, and it did a whole variety of other things. Since that was passed, there are petitioners within the state of Oregon who have put forward a referendum, which is allowed, and they need a number of signatures. I think they turned in over 200,000 signatures. I think they need about 78,000 signatures to the Secretary of State. And it is likely that there will be enough signatures, verified signatures, that this referendum will go on the ballot, and it'll probably go on the ballot in November of 2026. The Department of Revenue has sent out a message and letting all of us know that they will not be collecting the 0.1%, that payroll tax, nor will they be collecting the gas tax. You can imagine they can't really collect those things because if the referendum passed, they couldn't refund that money. For example, the gas tax, or paying the gas tax at the pump. It would be impossible to do that. So legally, they can't collect the tax. So even if the referendum fails in November of 2026, we won't see any of this money until July or August of 2027. And we'll only see it for a year because the House Bill 3991 had a sunset on the tax into June 30th, 2028. So we would only see that money for a year anyway. So we didn't include it when the last slide you looked at that had the no levy, that was also no additional STIF funding. Because we're painting a conservative picture here.
Would an extension of the sunset require an act of both our state house and state senate? Thank you.
They meet in 27. Again.
They've kind of indicated they're not going to take this up in 26,
Yeah.
that it'd be 27 that they take this conversation up.
So, and then there's just a little information on what we have to do to amend our STIF plan. Because as you can well imagine, we get revenue, but it has to subscribe to a plan. And so we would need to update our STIF plan. Please note that when we terminated service on a variety of routes that we did, we took that money that the STIF was paying for, the STIF was paying for some of those routes, and we moved that money into Route 10. So almost all of the STIF money, not all of it, but the vast majority is going to pay for the 10 right now. And that's money outside the general fund, that's money outside the levy, that's money outside our current property tax. Just wanted to let you know that. Next slide. So one of the things we also talked about was the Route 10 and our service quality. We had some data in October, and we knew that the data in November was going to be more illustrative of kind of what our data really looks like, because we are moving toward, we started in September, we had September and October to kind of gel with our new routes and the frequency and all the things and all the changes. So I think November is a good month. And what you'll see in terms of the two things that we look at schedule adherence. That is really how frequently we're on time or late. So if you looked at the trips in November, we made 468 trips on Route 10. And we were on time 99% of the time. And we were late 1 to 5 minutes, 6 times. So that's 1%. Keep in mind that one of the reasons we're experiencing this is that there is significant construction on Highway 99. If you drive on Highway 99, you cannot help but see it. Highway 99 is now like 2 lanes, and there's lots of construction, and there's lots of people, and there's lots of things going on Highway 99. And we believe that that is one of the reasons that even though we're almost perfect, we're not even closer to perfect. And that's temporary. That construction isn't going to last forever. I think it's probably going to last another year, maybe a little bit less.
I was told today, May.
Okay.
Next
So less than a year, which will be great when that's done. And we actually have some new, just anecdotally, we have some new bus stops that are actually going in right now that are really exciting. The other thing we look at is passenger load. So that's how many people are riding the bus, and is it too crowded? Regardless of the data that you see here, I want you to know we have not picked up someone. So that would be, I think, sort of abject failure of passenger load metric. And we're not there. And we are far better than that. If you look at from Medford to Ashland, the times that we're a little bit less than 99% is between the hours of 12 and 6. And you'll note that when I talk about a project, a system project, we had a system project that was increasing the frequency on the 10 between the hours of 12 and 5. And that's one of the reasons. But still, we're looking at 2 to 3% of the time there are more than 30 people on the bus. That's a very small percentage of time, given how many times the Route 10 operates, 468 in a month. And then from Ashland to Medford, what we see is there's a little bit of exceeding passenger loads in the morning, 2.5%, and then there's a little bit in the evening as well, in that early evening, the 12 to 6. So I just wanted to put that into perspective. And I think this does that. And please note that we will keep watching this and keeping an eye on all of our routes and our schedule adherence and our passenger load as well over time.
Questions, go ahead.
I don't remember the exact numbers for October, but from what I recall, the equivalent statistics we had for October on Route 10, what we have for November seems like a significant improvement. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And is November traditionally a heavy ridership month, or is that a lower ridership month?
Historically, October is our highest month, and then it kind of dwindles down from there. And then we also see a spike. I think there's one other time in the year that we see
We use the
March.
month of April.
April?
Also.
April. For some reason, we don't know why, but it's
It's because there's no holidays in October, or unless you count Halloween. Halloween is not like a day off for most people, but October and April, school's in session. There's not a lot of people who are taking trips, vacations, etc. And so those are the 2 months out of the year. But this isn't, it's an improvement from October, but even October's data wasn't far from this. When you're looking at the schedule adherence and the passenger loads, it was slightly, higher, but not below. There were no instances where it was, below like 95%, for example.
Just a quick question, like when we were going full bore before September, how were these numbers to actually be able to compare?
Paige, do you know?
Yeah, we did, we presented that to the board at the last meeting. So 2024 compared to 2025, October 24 to October 25. And it was slightly better in 2024 when we had 20-minute service. But again, the range of deviation was, 1 to 2 percentile. I think what we've been focusing on is that 12 to 5, but we're also seeing the similar types of adherence and crowds happening in the early morning. So it's not just one time during the day with the Route 10. Although from 12 to 5, we do seem to have like an ongoing period. We're also tracking the duration of time that the crowding is happening. So it's one thing if you're only having to stand for a couple minutes and hold on to one of the bars. It's another if you have to stand for like 15 minutes. And so those are things that we also are tracking. And it's, again, these instances where we're seeing this happening, it's a low number, but we are seeing it from Ashland all the way into Medford. It's not like it's this short little, piece of the route, which shows you how busy that route is. But with our buses and the way that we're currently providing this service, it is manageable. I mean, 97, 98, 96% of the time, we're under 30 people. And so those 30 people have a seat or they are standing because they choose to.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Okay, next slide.
Sure.
So this is the updated possible service option that we provided you with. And in here, we updated the overall result in, say, year 5. So this directly relates to adding the $250,000 a year into the overall budget. And it also here stresses on these presentations that Paige made that this is also going to maintain current service levels. So if you look at option 1, I believe it was in the 4 million, like 4.2 million before. Oh, I have it right in front of me. Yeah, it was 4 million before, and with the $250,000 a year, it's now in the 2.8 million in the 5th year deficit. And then option 2 went from, I have them all right here. Turn the page. 2.2 million to 1 million. And then option 3, which was in a deficit in year 5, went from a deficit of 900,000 to a positive number of 340,000. And the last but not least, option 4, which was 300,000 in the positive before, is now 1.5 million in the positive. And just wanted you to be able to see that, what a difference that $250,000 a year is making on each one of these options. It opens up some more choices. Any questions?
So before, didn't we had 5 options? Did we just lose 5? Or these are pretty much,
No, we only had 4.
oh, we did only have 4, okay.
If there's no questions, let's go to the next slide. And when we do that, will you keep that slide with the service options funded by levy only up? And also have this one up, the service projects pros and cons, so you can kind of look at both of them. And I ask that was the method to the madness of no staples, because the service projects pros and cons was really staff's thinking about how to package things. And so when I go through the pros and cons, I'll be articulating why we packaged things the way we did. The tenets of the idea and why we did what we did was we were looking at what our customers had asked for and their priorities. And then we were also looking at fiscal efficiency, meaning people, because really our business is primarily people. It's our drivers and our support staff. And so how to best utilize anyone that we had to hire that was new. So in terms of the service projects, the first one is Saturdays. This was 3/4 of the people that voted, 3/4 of the people that voted wanted Saturdays. That was their number one. And you can understand why, because Saturday is a whole other day that you can go to work. When I was riding the bus and actually taking surveys, I was amazed at how many people wanted Saturdays because they had jobs that they used to be able to work at on Saturday. And some of them could go and some of them couldn't, because an Uber, like one gentleman I talked to who said, an Uber is $50, both ways. I mean, $50 for the whole trip. And it's just not worth it for me to go to work. And people shop. In fact, 25% of our riders use Saturday service for shopping. The other benefit is, this is a system-wide benefit. By increasing Saturdays or going to Saturdays, everyone from Central Point to Ashland benefits. So this is a system-wide benefit. Now, it is the highest cost. And one of the reasons it's the highest cost, and if we're talking about pros and cons, is that we have to hire not only the drivers that we would hire, but we have to hire 4 support staff. Because Saturday is a whole other day, right? People work 40 hours a week. They work Monday through Friday. So we need a mechanic on duty. We need a fueler on duty. We need a field supervisor, and we need a dispatcher. So we have to hire those 4 people. And that's why it ends up being, one of the reasons it ends up being the higher cost. In addition, one of the benefits, and I didn't say this, I'm sorry, is that this opens up another day for TransLink, for TransLink riders or people who need ADA services and need those services. It opens up another day because right now, because we're not operating on Saturday, that is not an option for people on Saturday. So that is a benefit. The next one is weekday evenings. So this was a second priority of non-Route 10 riders, and it was the third priority for all respondents. About 50% of our surveys were done by Route 10 riders. So you can see that that's why the second priority for all respondents was Route 10, improving that frequency to 20 minutes all day. But for the weekdays, these are typically students and workers, employees. So when I say employees benefit, I probably should also say employers benefit. Because it's not just the employees that benefit, it's actually the businesses that they work at that benefit. And frankly, it's the people that shop at those places. We all benefit too. So there's tremendous benefit. There are what we would need to have weekday service, weekday extended service. If we pulled it out, we would still need 2 people. We would need a dispatcher and a field supervisor. And the reason we would is because that day, those weekdays are like 18 to 19 hours. People usually work 8 hours. So you can see that there's that gap. So we would need to hire a couple of people. Again, system-wide benefit for increasing our evenings, increasing the hours in the evenings. Now, historically, this has been kind of lower ridership. In the scheme of things, I understand that, but for the people riding it, these are critical services. It also expands TransLink and ADA services because we're going later in the evening, so people can avail themselves of those services as well. Those 2 options, if you look up into the possible service options funded, we put those together. We put the weekdays, the extended hours of the weekdays, and Saturdays together because we're utilizing those support staff efficiently. And that's what we want to do. That second priority for all respondents was increasing the frequency on the Route 10 to 20 minutes all day. At the time, we didn't offer them the Route 10, 20 minutes, 12 to 5. It was all day. Now, the pros of this are it increases convenience to our riders. It probably will soften the passenger load and this issue of schedule adherence. It only serves a portion of our riders. We're not gaining any ridership by having the Route 10 run at a higher frequency. We are gaining riders from Saturday and we are gaining riders from weekday evenings, but we're not for this this improved frequency for Route 10. And it doesn't utilize our support staff on Saturday. So putting the Route 10 20 minutes all day and Saturday, it does become a rather inefficient use because we still have to have people on Saturday, but that frequency is within the period that we're operating right now, that increased frequency. So we're still having to have those 4 people for Saturday, but they would be like part-time. And honestly, it's hard to find part-time people who want to work on a Saturday, frankly. And that is not very efficient. It's not very fiscally efficient. And then finally, the Route 10, this 20-minute from 12 to 5. And we put that in thinking that maybe that was a good sort of compromise on the Route 10. Because it does all the things that 20-minute service all day on the Route 10 does. But it's shorter, but it's still very expensive. I mean, the reality is increasing the frequency on the Route 10 is very expensive. And again, it doesn't utilize our support staff in the way that is efficient. Because again, we would have those people that needed to work on Saturday. So we wanted to show you this, so whether you all decided to pick an option or you decided to prioritize service projects in light of getting the levy and or getting more money, we wanted you to understand why we put things together like we did and what we see as the benefits, the pros and cons of each of these projects. And I hope we were able to articulate that well for you.
I think so. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Makes a lot of sense as to the efficiencies of the service. And I sort of am hearing also in between the lines that Saturday is a good thing as much as it increases, because it actually gives us the ability to really ramp up service.
I think so. And it's not even coming from me. It's coming from our riders.
I know.
Our riders know. And that's what they want. They want that ability to go shopping on Saturday. Like people who have cars who work Monday through Friday, when do you typically do your shopping? Especially if you can't use your car. Let's say you couldn't use your car after 5 or after 6, because just like the bus doesn't run, right? So you're going to use your car on the weekend, on Saturday if it's available. Just like people want to do who don't have cars or who rely on transit. So that is that. And so if you don't have any other, do you have any questions on that? Okay, next slide. Oh, yeah.
Was curious, how many drivers have we let go or will be being let go?
Well, with this scenario, should we, I guess, let me ask you a question. Do you mean if the levy doesn't pass, or do you mean, are you talking about these options?
These options, basically.
Okay, so these options are all an add. They're all an add of staff.
Okay.
An add of drivers, because we're increasing, like, let's say we do Saturday. We don't have, that's a really good question. Because every business, you have employees and you have some margin of work they can absorb, of extra work they can absorb. Right now, we're at our margin. So if we're going to increase service, we need to increase drivers and we need to increase those support staff that I talked about. So for example, on option 1, we would need to increase 14 drivers. And that goes down to 12 on option 2, 9 on option 3, and 6 on option 4. So thanks, Deb. So it's all an add.
Yeah.
Yes. So 14 for option 1. Option 2 is 12. Option 3 is 9. And option 4 is 6. And go ahead.
One reason I ask is because training all those drivers is an investment we've made already for some that we've lost. And can we use some of those on a part-time? Are any of them willing to do that? Or cross-train in other places where we can keep them on staff?
What we would do is, so we laid off a lot of drivers.
Right.
And per the union contract, we would need, depending on when this all happened, but we would look at bringing back drivers. So and there will be drivers that have moved on and won't want to come back. But there will probably be some people who are just doing what they're doing and waiting for a phone call for them to come back here. So I anticipate that the vast majority, if not all, of these drivers that we would need are former RVTD drivers.
Because we laid off like 63.
There was a 62 employees total, but not all were drivers. I don't have the number in front of me exactly, but
Four drivers.
a large percentage.
So 14 is the highest number of ad we have here, so that's maybe 25% of the drivers we laid off. I would have to guess that we laid off close to 50 drivers.
So maybe we'll get some of that investment back.
Yeah.
Right.
And talking about some of these additions, you're going to need additional staff. Perhaps some of those could be drivers that were laid off.
They could, or we had people in those jobs that were laid off. So we laid off a dispatcher. We laid off field supervisors, we laid off fuelers, we laid off mechanics. So we have a group of people that do have the skills that we need. And should the levy pass, we would be looking at, you're right, at using those resources because it's very expensive to hire a new employee and train them. When we have employees that were very good employees that, but for not anything to do with their work, were laid off. So we would be happy to bring some of them back.
Sure.
Okay. So the Route 30 is in all four options.
Yes.
I don't see it on here. Can you talk a little bit about that one?
Sure. It's not because it's like, we felt like it was kind of neutral. There are pros and cons, but the bottom line is Jacksonville is in our district. So we need to provide service to them. And there are people that ride the bus to and from Jacksonville into Medford and from Medford to other places. So it's not just people coming to Medford alone. But we looked at our ridership and when our ridership is the highest, and we looked at five trips basically back and forth, and we can afford that in these scenarios. So the benefit is they're in our service district, we should provide service. But there is also, I mean, that's sort of the ethical, probably legal requirement of us. But then there's the benefit to the people who live in Jacksonville that couldn't take the bus anymore, or taking the bus out to Jacksonville, work.
And when we cut the Route 30, that was replaced with the new West Medford route, right? And so would there be any change to that new West Medford route if we bring back the Route 30?
I don't think,
Is it actually the area that we cut off? So if you remember the Route 30 and the Route 2, both went down. The Route 2 went down to Bimart and turned around and went back. Doesn't do that anymore. So actually you would be adding a little bit of service area into there because it would go by Bimart and serve that area now. So that area was cut off by Thunderbird Market.
because that's as far as we go now. And the other benefit to the Route 30 is, of course, TransLink, is, of course, those people who utilize the ADA services and those services that would be able to use those services now.
Valley Lift.
Valley Lift, sorry.
It's okay.
So that
Valley
would be
Lift.
extended out to Jacksonville,
Yep.
Yes.
West Medford.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. That's okay. No, it's okay. Okay, so next slide. So tonight, what we would hope to get is the board to have a discussion and provide some direction on the levy increment. We're going to talk about the ballot title, the caption, having a service priority discussion. In that because that will help inform us on how to prepare the summary. And then our upcoming February meeting, we'll talk about the explanatory statement. But so you all received the SEL 803, that notice of measure of election. And Paige, next slide. What I wanted to give you just visually on the screen and in front of you as well is in 2021, what our caption was, what our question was. Keep in mind, we put the 13 cents in, but that was only because that was in 2021. You could decide to have a different number. That's just for the purposes of what we did in 2021. Then we had a summary in 2021, and that's in front of you. If you don't have that sheet with the summary in 2021, I will go make some copies for you because you probably need to look at that as well. Do some of you need that? Okay, not a problem. Yeah.
Computer on, but.
So keep in mind that for staff, what we're looking for is, again, that dollar amount. So we can bring that back in the question. Whether you think this caption kind of captures, and these captions are, they're very basic. You don't have a lot of words. Like you have 10 words, and I counted these words, and these words are more than 10, but apparently some of these words don't count as words from the clerk or from the elections official, state law. So it looks like more than 10 words, and it is, but that is what was in the voters pamphlet in 2021. So just trying to get an idea of kind of what you think about these. We don't need to totally wordsmith them because we're going to kind of talk to our attorney as well, but just to get an idea. And I know, Chair Morrow, you want to have a discussion, a kind of a broader discussion that kind of aligns with the summary. And so turning it over to you.
Right. So I don't have the 175 word summary, but that actually is on, the distinction here is that this stuff's all on the ballot, right?
Mm-hmm.
The explanatory statement, is that also on the ballot? Or
Yes.
is that just in the voters pamphlet?
Yes.
Okay. So then we have, how many words do we get on the explanatory statement? Does anybody know?
500.
500, okay.
But you can spend time on the explanatory statement tonight.
Right.
But you don't have to because we have another meeting to talk about it.
Right. Yeah, we've got time. All right, so I think one of the issues beyond the levy assessment, whether it's 13 or something more, is just whether it's necessary to tie our 2026 levy to any specific restoration of service or any service whatsoever, right? We do know that it will cover existing service. We do need it for that. And then we've got this short list of things that could come back, right? It's possible that if we wanted to get to Route 10 at 20-minute service for the entire day from 7 to 6, if we put that in there, we wouldn't be able to potentially collect it if we aren't able to fund it. Does that make sense? So we're really stuck on what we actually tie the levy to. And so after the last meeting, I started thinking that the best thing to do would be to characterize it in the generalist terms that we did in 2021. If you guys looked at the memo we got from Ms. Matting before, in 16, we actually tied it, right, really clearly. And in fact, just because I've been doing some work on the Political Action Committee, it's just amazing how we were able to actually figure out what things were going to cost back then. I mean, we had a not that we published this in the ballot, but we had, that 8 cents of our 13 cents was going to go to current service levels. 1.5 cents was going to go to Saturday service, restoring Saturday service. And the route 20 to 30 minutes frequency was going to cost us 5 cents. We had it all dialed down. And again, I don't know that it wasn't necessarily in the ballot, but it might have been utilized in the communications with the public when we were out there lobbying for the measure. So my real concern, and I went back and listened to our meeting a couple weeks ago, our last meeting, and I think everybody was on the same page, is that we all feel like we don't know really what's coming, right? Some of us feel a little hemmed in by having to plan and make decisions on a 5-year budget when we don't know what's coming in the positive or the negative, right? So we may actually be getting $3.6 million in 27, 28, which is our second year of obtaining levy revenues. We may, if we got that, we could cover all of the potential services that we're asked to consider tonight, right? But we don't know. So my goal, I think, is that we really consider not adopting specific language about what's going to be coming back, and that we direct staff in January to present a separate kind of resolution that shows that the board is directing staff to bring back these services in a prioritized order, irregardless of whether the levy passes. It'll be in the context of when we get money, whatever money it is. This is what we want you to do. And what we haven't thought about, of course, and what we could think about some more in January is whether it'd be easy to actually include, something that I know is near and dear to staff's heart, and that is, developing a reserve again. I mean, the discussion we had after listening to it again was really confusing as to whether there's a reserve or not a reserve. But it was really clear that that's something that is important to staff, and it should be to us as well, because it also helps us deal with those contingencies. So that said, the worst case scenario is if the federal government goes off the rails again, right? We're still able to collect this $2.7 million every year, plus the something that we get from our regular tax base. So that'll be like $6 million. Still, we'd have a year, and we would still potentially have the 1% of the payroll tax. So even if the federal government just took away all of our money, we'd still have about $9 million to provide service in our community, as long as we're still able to collect the levy if we pass it. So in other words, we have to not tie it to any specific service, because if we need to cancel Saturday service, that would potentially mean we can't collect the levy if we tie it to that. Hopefully I made that clear.
I'd like to get one clarification. So the idea is that we don't marry the levy to a specific service we're going to offer, but we do include somewhere in the ballot description, this is the list of things we would like to do with this money, and this is how we want to prioritize it.
So that's a good question too, because that can be done by way of voter pamphlet statements separate from what's actually on the ballot. And that's really the key question to us, right? Is because I think, the political action committee can actually write a statement of support and say, while the district hasn't earmarked anything, any particular services, you can see in this resolution that this is the priority that the board has set for services to come back.
Okay.
Which could be covered by, some or all of the levy, depending on how far down the list we go. Okay, so that's one thing. But the thing is the pamphlet, the ballot itself wouldn't necessarily say that. So that's the 175 words that we have to figure out what to say. And maybe not all of it tonight. Maybe we can ask staff. We can just direct them to say, we don't want it to be tied to anything specific. And maybe we don't even want to tie it to any list of priorities either, if in fact we include one of those priorities that may not be funded in 5 years. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, if we can have it be a separate voters pamphlet statement that we write in, like as the PAC, with the, hey, here's our intention for what we'd like to do.
And the,
That makes me happy.
and the campaign communications can also do that as well. Yeah.
I wouldn't even use the word intention. I would say aspiration maybe would be more accurate, or what we want to convey.
Don't we have to be careful, the PAC, like speaking like we're RBT, like we're making that decision? We have to be
Right.
careful about that.
So
This is what we'd like to do, but
The PAC would be just pointing to a resolution.
when you look at this SEL,
Right,
SEL,
thank you.
it really doesn't talk about what we're putting back.
This one in 2021, yeah.
It
So it's
doesn't.
probably sufficient.
Yeah.
We'd have to adjust it, talking about how many rides we annually do, which route, how many routes we're serving. But if you look at this, I mean, I was just cruising through here and trying to look. I don't think that there's anything in here that says specifically a route.
It didn't, yeah.
I'd like to make one comment. You're talking about we would still have $9 million in revenue if all of the others did not happen. And I just want to point out that if you're looking at the sheet that I presented today, that the expenditures for we're currently doing next year will cost $18 million. So you're talking about current service, we lose $9 million, then how are we going to provide even the service we're currently providing?
No, I'm not saying,
It didn't,
I'm just
no.
saying that we wouldn't have to like declare bankruptcy and not provide any service. We would have at least $9 million if the federal government quit funding us to
Well-
do some service. We'd obviously have to cut a bunch, but we would still be able to provide something.
Just trying to,
Yeah,
that,
so half the service. Thank you.
yeah, apparent that it's
Mhm.
not going to be a good thing.
Nope.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the summary doesn't show up on the ballot or the voter's pamphlet statement, but is on the website of the county clerk. People don't ever go look at it.
It is in the voters pamphlet.
Is it in the voter's pamphlet?
Yeah, because I pulled the one from 2021. And so the summary, all of this is in there as,
But not on the ballot. That's the difference.
oh, on the ballot. I'm sorry.
No.
You were right.
Yeah, and so most voters, many voters see the ballot and they see the voter's pamphlet statement. And they don't see that. So it's really important, the voter's pamphlet statement submitted by PAC that would have, and maybe more, maybe lots of them. From
So,
various
so
people.
do I have that right? Is it just the 10 and the 20 words that are actually on the ballot? I can't remember. Or is it the 10, 20, and 175?
Not on the ballot, but in the voters.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Okay. So it's just the 10 and 20
In the
on the
explanatory statement.
ballot. Okay.
Right. I didn't see, I'll be honest, I did not look to see what was on the ballot.
It's so important.
I looked at the voters pamphlet when I looked at the data that I got. So
I believe that your caption and your question are both on the ballot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the rest of the summary is in the voter's pamphlet.
Along with the explanatory
Right.
statement.
right.
So you have to look beyond that place where you mark the circle. You have to look at the pamphlet if you want to get more specific information. Because I mean, I remember looking at a ballot and it says, vote yes or no to ballot measure, whatever, and it gives a very brief, like, couple sentence explanation. And then if you don't actually read the voter's pamphlet, you don't really know what you're voting yes or no on. That's my.
Right. Well, you have,
remembrance, I
right.
think.
I mean, it does say the dollar amount. You're right.
But I mean, what you're getting for the ballot measure.
Just really important to verify what the DA's office ends up putting into the statement, because they can cut the language some. Now, I'm telling you this because we had a ballot measure like this, and it was the text was clear, but it got cut by the DA's office. The full version was on the website. Nobody goes to look at that. So in the end, there's confusion. And so there was litigation on the state through the state Supreme Court about when the Republicans walked out and then they challenged that. What they ended up ruling was that it was based on what the voters thought they were voting on, based on what was on the ballot and what was in the voters pamphlet statement.
Okay.
So that's just a little nuance that can become very important.
Thank you. So I will take a look. I will find the ballot for 2021 and see what was on there. And I may have that in my files. I have the voters pamphlet, but I didn't look further into that file to see, but I'll check that out.
Because even the voters pamphlet submission that maybe the PAC puts in is not really legally binding, but what is in the actual official statement is.
The explanatory statement.
Yeah.
Well, as well as the summary.
Mhm.
All right, I can't find the ballot. I do, yeah. So I do know that it's a grayed area for both the summary as well in the pamphlet. So I am wondering whether it actually does go on the ballot, the grayed area.
And I'll bring that back.
Okay.
So at our next meeting, I will bring the ballot back and the voters pamphlet back. And you'll get that before, in your packet.
I think there's a second part of that, and knowing what sections are on the ballot versus the voters pamphlet is good. Also, if we can figure out what are we legally binded to within that. If it's only the ballot, then that gives us a lot of room to play, and I'd like some certainty on that.
Okay, we'll find that out.
On the question, that last sentence, is that a requirement that we put that in?
Yes.
Or- Yeah,
The summary.
it reads like it's required there. Just want to confirm.
Yeah, if you look at this sheet, this is what we turn in. So what was handed out, that was what was turned in 21.
So the
And it's that,
this measure may cause property taxes to increase by more than 3% required to be there.
I think so. That's the
it's in the last, it's in
Measure
all the
50, yeah.
three that we did.
Yep.
Is that true even if we don't increase the 13 cents?
Yeah, because it's
Be-
by law, it will go up, it's indexed. And then there's that statement at the bottom which actually projects the actual 3% increases
You mean it's
over time.
over and the top, it's over and above the 3%, our little piece, is that what you're saying?
No, it's just what by law, we're only allowed to collect as far as assessed value. It can increase only up to 3%. And so that's why we have to let them know that there will be potentially an increase, and it's the one that's just by default if your tax assessment increases, right? So some people, their tax assessments may not increase. I don't know, but
I don't think the county does.
they don't ever let that go, huh? They don't ever waive that. So yeah, I think this bottom part is also something that's required, but they'll check with staff to see, council to see if that's still required, but it has to include the actual 3% over the 5 years. Go ahead.
But just to get some clarity, oh, go ahead.
Issue is, sorry,
Just to get some clarity of what you want tonight, given the discussion we just had. So you still want us to give you the levy increments tonight, the ballot title caption, or at least a suggestion about it, as well as the service priority, which we'll get to. But when it comes to the caption, I apologize. Yeah, when it comes to the caption and question and summary, is that all stuff you are fine getting from us in January? Or is any of that something that you really need guidance on tonight?
What we were hoping to get guidance on is, in terms of the question, what is the dollar amount per thousand?
Okay.
I think, given your discussion, we can probably come back if the board wants to be more general in the summary, and that's the direction. We want to be general in the summary. We don't want the summary tied to any specific project. Then we would bring back language. Probably it would be a little bit different than the language of this summary in 2021, but it would probably be kind of similar. And we can, with that kind of direction, we can bring you back something at your next meeting for you to take a look at.
All right. And that gives you the time you need, given the timeline of everything that has to be submitted months in advance. Okay.
Yeah, because I think the wording in here is Monday through Saturday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, are you have another question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm going to try to make this make sense because I'm not sure it does to me. Doesn't it matter how much the assessed value changes for individuals, whether or not that it will increase could increase by more than 3%? That's dependent on assessed values though, right?
Correct. And the typically the county will assess your value up 3% automatically.
I see what you're saying.
So that's why, but they, by law, they can't go beyond that. So I can't think of a time when my assessed value has not increased.
And the reason for that is because it's not tied to your real market value. So you might say, well, property values could go down. We could hit a recession and property values would go down. But the difference between real market value and assessed value is really pretty vast. And so unless your property is going to go down like 50%, the county is still going to increase those assessed value by 3%.
Because of the fire in Talent and we lost our house,
They made some adjustments.
it seems to me some adjustments were made and our assessed value did not increase for the first year, as I recall.
There was, after the fire, there was some adjustments too, because a lot of people lost their entire home.
Right.
So there was that whole conversation that went to, do we just tax the value of the property because the home no longer exists? So I know that there was a lot of adjustments that were made during that time. And then as new homes were built, then they adjusted again because now the value of the house was even higher. So it was just it was a bad time for everybody, I think.
It was.
General.
We bought a new house or a different house in Medford instead of rebuilding on our property. So it's kind of murky right now. But it seems to me if we keep the assessed value or the assessment the same, psychologically, that's a positive thing, a selling point for the 13 cents because we're not raising it or trying to raise it. And, that we're doing a really good job in trying to keep our costs under control. And we're able to continue the current level of service that we have with the 13 cents.
Are you
Does that
making a
make
motion?
Me?
Yeah, I
Okay.
believe I heard a motion. Dan has made a motion that we adopt a 13 cents or we continue to go with the 13 cents per million.
Chair Morrow, can I just interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
So we don't need a motion right now.
Oh.
And the reason I say that is because we're going to have a public hearing.
Oh, right. Okay.
So what,
You want a straw poll?
I just kind of want some direction.
All right.
Yep.
Are we
Straw poll.
straw poll?
And also, can I add to that?
Mm-hmm.
That we don't identify specific increases in service levels because that's too uncertain. We might be able to make large increases in service or smaller ones, depending on how it all shakes out. So I agree with what Tanya said.
Why don't we take that as two separate questions for us? And then we'll start with the cents per thousand. Is there any concerns or anybody want to discuss doing something more than 13 cents? Katrina, you're still there? Yeah. Can somebody read that? I can't. She good?
She says, oh, you got it.
Non-motion, something went away.
That's a non-motion.
With the non-motion to
maintain
maintain the current levy increment.
Yeah, and
I apologize.
It's okay. It's cute.
I'm having some real weird pain stuff tonight, so I needed to lay down. And
It's okay.
Thanks for
I'm
being
off-
with us.
yeah, that's why I'm off camera, but I'm comfortable with the tone of this discussion. I agree that especially if it's legally binding, making sure that the language within the ballot is vague because we don't want to make specific increments and then basically not talk ourselves or set ourselves up to not be able to do what we need to do.
Thank you, Katrina.
Mhm.
Are we all good with 13?
Yes.
I'm good with 13. I know at the previous meeting, we discussed what would our finances look like if we raise it to 15, and the amount that we make isn't worth the risk that causes us to not get the levy passed in the first place.
Yeah.
That gives a target for
Yeah.
people to shoot at. Not, I don't like the wording of what I just
Okay.
said.
You know what you meant.
Sorry,
Okay.
I apologize for that.
On the other general issue about not specifically tying it to any particular resumption of service, are we also sort of in agreement on that?
I agree. For sure.
I am, I guess, I do feel like we should say something about that our intention is to increase service though. Because I think that is the intention with this, is to add back some of the service that was lost. And I mean, now whether that has to go into the ballot or if it can be provided some other way, I think
I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you.
but I think that's an important message to
And-
get back out there.
Yeah.
That we do intend to add back some service.
I like the message, but the word intend commits it a little bit too much. I think we should say our aspiration or our hope is to make increases in service back to previous levels.
Well, let's just, I know, Tyler, you want to say something first? Go ahead.
I agree with Carl on this. I think once we get the clarity at the next meeting, we'll know a little bit more. I would like to get that information on what our intentions, aspirations, whatever you want to call them. I'd like to get that as close to the voters as possible without it becoming something that's legally binding to us. So if it turns out we can put it in the summary and that's not something that we are beholden to legally, great, I'm okay putting it there. If we can't put it there because that's legally binding, okay, then we'll ask if the PAC will submit a statement with it.
I wasn't saying to not present that to the public. I'm just saying to not make it seem like, we're for sure going to do it.
We could say something more like to help maintain and restore services as possible.
That's maybe some good words.
Because even we would probably not run afoul as long as we maintain some additional service, whether it's just increasing frequency on the 10, right? So we could probably afford that for the 5 years without running afoul of, even if we had to, for instance, cancel Saturday service again because the federal government went off the rails.
Again,
Yeah, so so I think you guys could figure out some way of saying that it is likely that additional services will return.
Some additional.
Yeah, and that might be enough to give notice that that's the intent and then our goal, but without specifying what it is.
Well, and
Exactly.
that's why I had originally thought in my mind it would be helpful if the board kind of came up with a prioritized list so people knew what you were thinking. And, it was being based on what they were asking for. And that it's not going to be everything. It's not going to add back, all of those routes that we cut. It's not going to give you Sunday service. But here's what we're thinking, that there's certain things that we know are on the list out there. And as money becomes available, we'll be able to add back. And my goal, and this, is to go back after some kind of transit funding statewide. And, as you have that list, you're going to revisit it. You don't necessarily have to put it in we're going to do it in this level. Boom, 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 boom. These are the services that we know are a priority to our community, and we will restore them as soon as we can.
Mhm.
So I'm just looking real quick, not to get into wordsmithing too much, but we did have the one statement, without the levy funding, RVTD will begin preparations for cutting back transit services to the community. In this case, we could probably easily and without any complications say with the levy funding, RVTD will begin preparations to resume or restore services.
Or without the levy funding, RVTD will not be able to restore services to the level that we were able to.
And we also know we're going to have to cut service at some point. That year out, that 5th year is going to be a problem for us.
It depends unless we don't get to the point of actually increasing Route 10 to 20 minutes for the entire day. Because if we do it, if we give you a priority, and that's at the last end of the priority list, then it'll be up to you to decide
Right.
whether to bring it on.
But there's this part that says here, without the levy funding, RVTD will begin preparations for cutting back transit services to the community. So we could put a statement in there.
Because in year 4, we will have to cut. If we don't get the levy, we'll have to cut again.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
See what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
we
yeah,
might
okay, got
wanna
it. You can do it both
also
ways.
So
can
you
say
can
both things.
say,
Yeah.
you can say both.
Both ways, yeah. So the one thing we do need to worry about is saying through Saturday, though.
Yeah, there's, I
You
circled,
got that one too? Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I circled a lot of words that need to be fixed.
Can,
There's, oh, sorry. There's a big difference between, needing to cut service in 4 years versus being able to start to restore some services immediately. I think saying that if this passes, that we can restore services, that could begin within that first year when it's still fresh in people's minds versus 4 years out. I mean, we'll have a couple more chances to ask for a levy before we have to actually cut services, I think. So
what I'm hearing is that we should definitely emphasize that first statement about bringing stuff back. And if we do leave a statement in about having to cut, maybe we can even be specific about it being towards the end of the 5-year period.
That'd be the end of the 3rd year.
Yeah, that early. Okay.
So are you saying to make the statement like a hope or a
3rd year.
list?
Well, I think that if you're really vague and you say, well, that
Yeah, 'cause we have
the
to pass
intention
it.
is to restore services.
balanced budget,
As
yes.
soon as we can?
Yeah, we'll be able to begin preparations for restoring service. We definitely will be able to do that. So that's clear, and it doesn't say what.
Preparation.
Yeah, and then to the extent that it makes sense, we would also say, but if it doesn't pass, we might need to even cut service beginning in year 4 or whatever.
That's probably a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I don't know how much resolution we're going to get on the summary statement tonight, since whether or not it is truly legally binding is a piece of information we don't have yet. And that absolutely influences how I would want it to look.
So what we will do is we'll wordsmith this, bring it back to you. We'll also run it by general counsel, them look at it. We'll have something for you in January.
So one other question. So the Route 30, we're bringing back in January, as soon as January, right? Oh, not, we're waiting till May? When are we bringing it back?
Bring it back. My understanding is whatever we do, we won't do it in November because that's when we start actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well,
Okay.
we can look at it, but I mean,
Okay.
this,
All of these numbers are based on that.
yes. so
Okay.
All the numbers that we've given you are based on not doing anything.
All right, till November. Okay.
can you remind me how much we won last time on this 5-year renewal?
It was about a 60-40.
Yes.
What was it?
I remember.
62 point something.
60?
It was up 1.5 points or so from 2016.
And the previous one went down about the same.
Same, right.
So do we want to go ahead and let staff know as to the priority of resuming services that we would like them to follow? And I'll just go ahead and start. I don't usually make motions, but it would be Route 30, oh, excuse me, maintain current service. Route 30. Weekdays, 5 to 8. No,
Those are on all of them.
I know. Do we want Saturdays before weekdays, 5 to 8? That's the question. I think we need Saturdays first for economies of scale.
We have to have
Seconded.
Saturdays.
Saturdays and then weekdays to 8. And then we just need to decide what we want to do with, do we want to bifurcate the Route 10 frequency stuff so that we're covering the afternoons first? And then second, going to full day.
Or you could just say, increase the frequency on Route 10.
Okay.
And you could leave it.
Yep.
To determine at that time what we needed.
Perfect.
We would bring that back to you. So it's
Yeah.
a decision that you guys.
Perfect.
I'm happy with that.
That's good.
That also makes sense. If we end up with more money along the way.
We're gonna have, what is it? 3.6 from the state funds. We're gonna have it. It's gonna come in.
Things will change.
That will come in.
I'm working on it.
Well, the community, well, yeah, I mean, it is true that it's not just our community that will be voting on that measure. And so it is possible it will go down, but there's a lot of people in the state that like transit. Gonna say it. Mhm.
And there's a lot of people there. You have to remember too, it's tied to ODOT.
Right. So the cities and counties are gonna be out there.
Cities and counties, you know, they receive 50% of those dollars. And in addition to that, there's the transit piece. So, you know, there's a lot that could happen on this. But, and I also think this has pushed leadership at the legislative level to do something now. I mean, I said that before, didn't push them hard enough. It's really starting to become critical.
When we can't get out to Diamond Lake in the wintertime, people will start feeling it, right?
Well, it's not only Diamond Lake, but just getting over to Bend, you're gonna have to go around.
Mhm.
So you're gonna have to go all the way to Klamath Falls and then across. You're not gonna be able to take that shorter shortcut. But it's not just that, it's, you know, all of the routes, they're closing down ODOT stations.
Could even be a Siskiyou Path.
I was gonna say,
Siskiyou
I know
Pass won't be
Siskiyou's gonna
plowed
be-
as often.
We'll have more potholes.
What about the Siskiyou Path?
It won't be able to be plowed as often.
There's just a lot that's going on.
That means the trucks are gonna be in 140.
Today, the discussion with my regional guys from our region with ODOT and just, it's pretty grim. They're going to do the best they can. But they're looking at a layoff probably in March, another big layoff.
We can get through most of the winter then, huh?
So they're going to try to prioritize it and make the money stretch as far as they can.
Speaking of prioritization, I just want to make sure I capture the previous discussion item correctly. Tanya, is what you were saying is that, was it like basically an unofficial motion for the board that our service priorities would be, number one, maintaining our current service, number two, Route 30 due to a legal obligation, number three, Saturdays, number four, extended weekdays from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m., and then Route 10, 20-minute service from 12 to 5. After that, Route 10 the rest of the day. Is that
We're gonna
correct?
leave it ambiguous for staff to decide at what level to increase the frequency.
For Route 10, that's right.
Yeah.
Route 10 frequency increase.
Yeah, to 20.
But otherwise, that order, is that something that folks on the board are comfortable with?
I think the thing that we just lose option 4 and the others are kind of, can be determined.
Mhm.
See, option 4 doesn't have Saturdays. And that's just not right. See, option 4 doesn't have Saturdays.
Mhm.
So that really isn't a good option.
Yeah, hopefully the resolution that we'll have in front of us, which will be separate from the levy, will just not characterize them by way of option. It's just gonna be
Yeah.
da, 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 da.
Yeah.
So does that prioritization, again, board members, let us know if you don't like that priority. Does that give you the information you're seeking tonight? Okay.
Because what we'll do is bring back, we talked about bringing back a resolution to you that would illustrate your priorities. So that's something official that someone could look at. And then bringing back basically the information that's on this 803 to you for review.
But the resolution is going to be not necessarily naming the levy money, just
Oh,
this
no,
is our
this is just-
service
oh.
increased priorities going forward from.
Oh, yeah,
here
that
on.
one
Right.
resolution, yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
So I don't think we can do all of it.
No. Did we move into your report? Do you have some more? We started with a report from the OTC chair.
Well, we don't want to talk about that.
Thank you, guys.
The reports from the general manager, we've really, the staff and I have really just been really working on this piece of it and working with the chair to kind of understand where the board needs to be, what we need to do to provide it. And, I know that it's not everything that the board wants. And it's not everything I want or that the staff want. And at some point all of the employees at RVT who have been laid off, they've been keeping their fingers crossed and really hoping that they could come back sooner. It's not great news for them either. But overall, I think in the state of Oregon, this is the dilemma that the state is in. And so I think in some ways you're showing that you're doing the back work to prioritize and figure this out. And I think that that's what's happening at the state level now with ODOT and with the commission is we're trying to prioritize how we're going to deliver services to the people who depend on them and put them in an order that we can do. And I think that the reality is going to come down to the funding mechanism. Nobody really knows where we are with the federal government completely, although the reauthorization is moving forward. They have added some things to the reauthorization that I'm concerned about. The CTAA, the Community Transit Association of America, is following all of that. They're following the reauthorization bill. We're meeting every other week to talk about what is it that we need to be really aware of in transit, regulatory. There is some language in the reauthorization that I'm concerned about that could increase our ADA services. And some of the bill language is that they want to see same-day service changed up into our 5307, 5310, and 5311 funds to where we have to consider that. Now, the good news is that our new software, and there's language in that bill that says you have to use a scheduling software, it has to meet these certain standards, and all of our new ADA software actually meets all that. So in some ways, I'm relieved that we'll be able to meet the obligation, but it could increase our valley lift costs.
They're going to fund it, aren't they?
No. So in the bill, there is not additional funding.
Okay.
But that's a sticking point I think that CTAA needs to be making along with all the other transit agencies. Under the ADA, you mandated the ADA years ago without funding. We've met that obligation, and although it's not the best service in the world and it's very difficult, and it doesn't necessarily meet everybody's rights of being able to have the same day service and the same service as you do on a bus. If they're going to mandate a second level to this, that they need to think about funding it. And so that'll be the fight that we'll be having at the federal level. So more to come. There is a fly-in that I'm already attending as a board member for CTAA, and they cover the cost of that.
Is that a lobby day kind of thing?
Yes, it'll be a lobby day, and it'll also be
Fly-in.
a fly-in to Washington, D.C., and they're bringing all the general managers in to have this discussion and to work on these problems. So see what happens from that. As far as the staff here, everybody is really just hyper vigilant on the budget, on the cash budget. So we have our budget that all of you signed off on and we accepted, but we also have a cash budget, which is our reality. And so we're going off of that and making sure that we're looking at all those things and we're making adjustments. We're selling some assets, we're moving some assets. Some of the things that we're considering is our electric vehicles, our cars that used to be part of moving our drivers back and forth for all those different routes and those satellite routes, incorporating them into our ADA services, which brings down our cost. And then the one thing I want you to track is that Standard Oil just announced that they're pulling all of their refineries out of California and moving them to Texas, which is our gasoline, and for the western states. So Washington, Oregon, and California all rely on those refineries now. And the estimation is it's going to drive our gas prices up in these three states to a really high cost per gallon. By having to ship the gas product now and being refined in another state, which is Texas. If that happens, moving towards electrification of our Valley Lift fleet is really, really critical, which the other good part is we still have those electric vehicles that will be coming in the future that will alleviate some of that cost. So we're looking at all those. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do and how we address all of those issues, and then looking at our assets. And I just got an email, which was really weird, from the Department of Administrative Services looking for property for the employment office. And they're looking for property in the Medford area, either to lease or to buy. So we'll be looking at any of our assets and seeing if maybe there's something that we can do there. They're only looking for a 5-year commitment. So,
Okay, we're sure it's not the Department of Homeland Security. Right?
no, it's the employment
Okay.
office.
Okay.
And I think it probably has to do a lot with Oregon paid leave and the increase of staff that they need to be able to deal with that. And also, I'm not sure, I think they're outgrowing their employment office over on, wherever it is, over on 6th. Yeah, Oakdale and 6th, I think, is where it's located.
GSA contracts are pretty decent.
So, some of the things that we've talked about is, is there office space we can lease here? Can we move our call center here and lease out that property? So got some work to do over the next few days because it's a really short window. But we'll be discussing it with our manager. I'll be discussing with the managers tomorrow. But that just came across my desk this afternoon. Other than that, we're just trying to, meet all of our obligations and move forward. And a lot of the meetings have been canceled. I think that when you get into your meetings and your call outs here, you can see that there were no meetings. But we're just working on everything here to give you the best estimation of what kind of assets and money we have available at the district, and being flexible enough to really look at what we can do in the future. And so although we may be calling out service levels or service priorities that we want to see come back, we still need to have that further conversation of, okay, let's say that we're able to lift the sunset on the 0.1% and we're able to get that back in paid by another source or something else that the state of Oregon decides to do. Or the referendum fails and we get the 0.1% back. We'll have to come back and visit all of this again and talk about priority and what you want to do. So I'm trying to stay positive, as are you, and I thank you for that. So just give us a little grace if sometimes we feel like we're not quite as positive we'd like to be. I have my days where staff go, today's not a good day to talk to her, just let her sit in her office and be like a mushroom.
I do now remember one of the things I noted when I was looking through the financials was we spend at least like $6,000 a month on Pacific Power electricity. So I guess I am wondering, I know everybody's got their plates full, but I would think it would be worthwhile to see what we could do to like put some solar panels on the downtown properties, that kind of thing, to make a dent in that. And then I'm also going to throw out that be lovely if the district could also start thinking about maybe doing a microgrid in the community that would be for resiliency, because we are downtown. So throw that out.
Explain to me what, I don't,
So that's where there's a grid and there are contractors that do it and there's funding that can be established, and the PUC is now just going through rulemaking, but it's where there's an actual grid that can be separated from the big grid, especially in times of emergency. So it still goes because it's switched off, and generally there's generation included in it. So there's generation by solar panels or whatever it might be, and storage. And so we are here, which is sort of key, and it could be like a public kind of partnership. That would be, I just think, awesome.
Part of that is having power generation closer
Mhm.
to the need.
Solar panels and storage.
Yeah.
Battery.
so right now, and Nick, I don't know if you want to come up and speak to this. I want him to explain what's going on the Crater Lake property with the solar power panels we have there. I think we talked about solar panels on this roof, and I'm not sure that it's rated to be able to have that kind of weight put on it, but let's talk about it.
I believe, I'm going to have to check on this building, but I believe that was the case. It wasn't engineered. You could put a small amount up there, I'm sure, but
Here.
on this building,
Yeah, okay.
probably not enough to cover the whole building. But going back to what Julie mentioned, so our main campus at 3200 Crater Lake Avenue. So the shop has actually a very substantial solar array that actually covers the shop, the old admin building, and the bus wash power. So most of the year, we actually don't have a power bill on that. The new transportation building has a solar array that covers a fair amount of that power bill. So probably about $4,500 of that $6,000 bill is actually from our CG compressor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
And unfortunately, it's on a different, it's called a circuit with Pacific Power.
Okay.
So it actually can't receive that solar.
Yeah.
Now, we could possibly, you could do your own solar array for that. It would probably be about the size of a large field, but it is possible.
Yeah, I mean, there are just a myriad of ways and actually to do things now that things are opening up a bit. And it's definitely cost effective in the long run these days.
Oh, great.
$5,000 could buy a bunch of panels these
Yeah.
days, so, yeah, okay.
This was, I think, back in 2012 when we did the shop, and it was, don't quote me on this, but approximately $250,000. And they tell us it's going to be about 15 years for that system to pay itself
Yeah,
off.
that was a pricey one. Yeah.
But, that still leaves you a decade of essentially free electricity at that point. So, I mean, it really does pencil out in the long run. Now, as far as, Paige can speak to this, but as far as grant opportunity for solar panels, it definitely is a possibility. And, something that we wholeheartedly support too.
Right, well, in your free time.
Of course. Now, kind of going back to your microgrid comment, I'm not super familiar. Now, I have heard of it, but I will kind of look into that, see what that entails.
They just passed a bill. So they're doing rulemaking and they're doing the low level kind of stuff right now where it's mostly going to be focused on public before they can dive deeper into like opening up to private entities and stuff like that. So yeah, it just occurred to me that, just because where we are here.
Now, that would be, I've heard of hydrogen microgrids. But yeah, so I'll look into that.
Hydrogen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd be happy to chat with you about it as I learn more too. So,
Yeah, that'd be great.
cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I always wonder too, with the renewable natural gas and, where it is. And I've always questioned maybe if there's a possibility for us, the pipeline comes in at Coker Butte, of being able to move the CNG compressor there. And I know that one of the things that we could consider is the renewable natural gas with a generator that would generate the compression for the compressor, because it's costly. And so
Renewable natural
Mhm.
gas, yeah.
the renewable natural gas running because they run generators now up at Dry Creek
At the
Okay.
landfill.
at the landfill. And if the pipe is coming in there and they're able to have some kind of a generator that would actually do the compression on the natural gas, might really save us a lot of money.
Well, it's,
Or if we were able to get the pipeline to RVT.
I still think there's plenty of opportunity to just truck it around, but because we don't
Well,
really want to
there's-
do any more infrastructure, but we definitely want that resource going to transportation and not into, natural gas line.
And I mean, one of the things that you could think about is, I don't know what a generator, what size generator yes, come up here. What size generator you would need to compress that natural gas, but even if you were trucking it from, let's say, Croker Butte,
Right.
Croker Butte, and bringing a tank over and running a generator off that, what kind of cost that would be?
I've never actually thought about that. So the problem is, the Coker Butte pipeline is basically done right now. But what happens, as I've done research and talked to Avista and, Dry Creek landfills, once that renewable natural gas hits Avista's line, a tariff is charged to each gallon of gas from the Oregon PUC, brings it up to about like $6 a gallon, which right now for regular gas, natural gas, we're paying $1. But if you didn't utilize the Avista pipeline, trucked in, for example, you wouldn't be subject to that tariff one single bit.
And it also creates some more decent jobs, right? Yeah, and it goes straight to transportation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, in theory, yeah, you could truck it in, run, let's just say a 400 kilowatt generator and make a tremendous amount of power.
And it's just the idea of us actually burning the actual molecules themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Some ideas.
Count
Yeah. I mean, you could even do
Possibility.
if it was trucked in or you brought it from a truck to a storage tank, for example, you could really have that generator just about anywhere for that matter and create a microgrid.
Yep.
So would the Energy Trust of Oregon subsidize that?
I'm not sure. From what I can tell, there's no ways around us paying the tariff once it hits the Avista pipeline, but I'm not really sure. I believe they would offer grants to help with a pipeline, for example, but that may be the extent of it.
Yeah, Energy Trust probably wouldn't do that, but you could probably sell the tax credits off of the renewable natural gas. And if you're running on the generator, there would be income there along with income to what we pumped.
Yep.
Off of that.
Yeah, I think it's a
Truck.
Department of Energy kind of grant kind of thing. They were so much into a lot of residential and commercial, not so much we're commercial, but this is more like industrial in the sense of actually doing something with the generator.
It'd be worth exploring and talking about.
Would be.
I mean,
I can do a little research and report back.
That'd be great.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
there's hope.
Yeah. Maybe we can cut some costs. We can cut some more costs. Go ahead.
I have another question for you, Julie. On the referendum, have you heard what that's going to look like? Is it going to be a referendum on the whole package, or are they breaking transit off as a separate referendum?
No, so in the referendum, I can give it to you exactly what is in it, because that was in the email I received this morning from the Department of Revenue. Just one second. Sorry. Give me a second here. I mean, I get a lot of emails in one day. Good Lord.
While you're looking, I also got that email from the Department of Administrative Services, but our IT department has trained me to hit fish alert on stuff like that. So
Well, it might have been, and I didn't want to say anything, but I think it was pretty official. But I will find out. Were you testing me? Okay. Sometimes I get tested and they go, you failed again. You have to take the class again.
While you're looking, I am assuming it's correct that there were no meetings, right? No COG, definitely no MPO, no TRADCO.
RVAC
RVAC.
meets January
You're right.
15th.
Okay. Make sure.
Okay, the referendum involves only some components of HB 3991. These include 6-cent gas tax increase, registration and title fee increases, and of course, the doubling of the employee paid payroll tax for public transit. That was by quote. They've said that, not me. And of course, it did not include the road user charge. So the EV will keep moving ahead. That
Does
piece
this
of
help
real estate.
Did they carve out the freight?
The freight they carved out,
Yeah.
the freight piece they carved out, and they also carved out some of the administrative part, like the governor now does the hiring and the firing or termination of the director. So I'm pretty thrilled about that because now I don't have to deal with that. Except to say, yes, I think this is welcome aboard.
Well, we got some work to do this year with the community, that is. Anything else for the good of the order?
And then I hope that I would like to say to the board that you have a nice holiday and that, everybody will enjoy family because that's really what it's about, and friends. And the rest of the stuff will be waiting for us come July, come July. Come January, we'll be back doing this, but try to enjoy your family and your friends. That's what's most important.
And 26 should be better than 25. 25 was pretty hard, wasn't it?
25
Yeah. Can
was
only get
brutal.
better at this point, I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, we're adjourned.
All right, thanks, everyone.
I need to get a clarification on one thing. She said they were carving out.
Yeah.
She said it covered